The value of silver nearly tripled in 2025 and may continue rising. What does this mean to you if you don't own an ounce of silver? Silver, like gold, is considered a monetary asset. You can buy American silver eagles in the hope that they'll offer you a hedge against inflation. If the price of eggs goes up, you can buy fewer eggs with each dollar. But if you buy silver and inflation soars, the silver you bought rises in value, possibly even faster than inflation. However, unlike gold, silver has many industrial uses, and these uses have increased. The making of solar panels and electric cars requires silver. The demand for silver is outpacing the production of new silver. This has resulted in a huge spike in silver prices. But there is much more to the story. One of the keys relates to the freezing of Russian assets when the war in Ukraine was expanded. When the West froze Russian assets, it sent a message to the world. If you hold assets stored in the U.S. or Europe, they can be frozen or confiscated. The result has been many nations and companies seeking to store their wealth in gold and silver rather than in U.S. Treasury notes. As trust in Western financial institutions declines, the value of many pension funds around the world decline. Even in Europe, many pension funds have invested heavily in U.S. treasuries. Miners used to bring canaries into coal mines. They could see the air was safe if the canaries stayed healthy. If the canary died, it was a sign they might need to get out of the mine. A sharp rise in the price of gold and silver is a sign that trust in the value of fiat currencies is declining. Before 1971, the U.S. dollar was backed by gold. When President Nixon took away this gold backing, the dollar became backed by nothing but trust. The dollar value of gold rose rapidly, and the value of the dollar declined and has continued to decline. In 1964, my mother bought a house in St. Cloud, Florida for $14,000. Today, that same house is listed on Zillow as being worth $297,700. In 1964, an ounce of gold was worth $35. Today, it's worth $4,342.30. This means that the St. Cloud house could have been purchased in 1964 for 400 ounces of gold. Today, even at the much higher dollar price, it could be purchased for 68 ounces of gold. You could buy a row of houses for 400 ounces of gold. If my mother had not purchased the house and had been able to simply hold on to 400 ounces of gold, it'd be worth $1,737,000 today. In 1964, you could go to a bank. In 1964, you could go to a bank and get a silver dollar by handing them a paper dollar. 1 year ago, an ounce of silver was worth around $30. As I make this podcast, the price on COMEX is $72.26. And the pre-sale price of 2026 American Eagle silver dollars is $88.53. Whether the price will go up to $300 or back down to $50, I don't know. What I do know is it is not likely to go back down below $30. The point is that the money we use every day at the gas station or grocery store is worth only what people think it's worth that day. It's backed by nothing but faith that it will not drop drastically in value. We tolerate inflation and complain about it, but we live with it. Can we live with a carton of eggs costing $20 or $200? What happens if the pension you're counting on drops drastically in value? What happens if rapid inflation wipes out the Social Security Trust Fund? For those who own silver, a $300 per ounce price sounds exciting. But if it gets there, will the $300 be worth what $30 is today? Will a grocery shopping trip cost you $800? The rapid rise in the price of silver is in part because the price has been manipulated downward for decades by paper contracts for silver. The big banks profited from this manipulation, but now the short-selling tools they used have left them vulnerable to massive losses. Their attempts to kill the recent silver rally failed spectacularly. The world wants gold and silver more than they want US dollars. Let's look at this from a spiritual perspective. It's clear that we're called to choose between a love of God and the love of money. We've been instructed not to live in fear. We are to trust God. But trust in God is not some magical bailout formula. If you trust in God, you seek His wisdom for yourself and for your nation. As individuals and as a nation, we have grossly rejected God's wisdom. He warned about the dangers of debt. The reason the $14,000 house is now worth $297,000 is because rising debt gets paid by creating more money, which lowers the value of the existing money. This rising debt and inflation causes families to need 2 incomes instead of 1. In 1964, my mother was raising 5 children with no help from my father or the government. She was a school teacher. A paper dollar was worth a silver dollar. We got by. Today, young people are putting off marriage and children because the prices and taxes are so high. They may have huge student loans to pay off. 15% of what an employer pays them goes for the Social Security and Medicare of the current elderly, including me. When God's wisdom is rejected, personally or nationally, there is a natural result. It's like baking a cake. There's a wise recipe and a wrong recipe for prosperity. The wise recipe brings blessing. The foolish one leads to an ugly, nasty mess. Jesus spoke of building your house on a firm foundation of obeying Him. He called it the rock. He warned that to build on the sand by disobeying Him would result in destruction. He doesn't have to come punish you. You punish yourself. If you get hooked on pornography, drugs, alcohol, gambling, or debt, you bring on yourself the natural results for such behavior. Things like greed, anger, and unforgiveness have natural prices to pay as well. Nations make poor choices like people do, and they get the natural results. You can build on the rock and truly seek to obey God. But if your society is paving a path to hell, you're in for a storm. We are in for a storm. We're in the storm. Young people unable to establish families is part of the storm. The path out of the storm is a return to God's wisdom, personally and nationally. The more you seek and obey God here in the storm, the better you will survive it and prosper when the storm passes. Do not live in fear. live in obedience.